Let me thank you once again for attending another press conference here at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. I want to extend a particular welcome to Gordon Mosley for appearing here for the first time today. And I should get right into the issue that is on the front page of all the newspapers today. The massive, unconscionable, unlawful increase or proposed increase for the tolls across the Berbice River. So yesterday we issued a press release, that is the People's Progressive Party. And in our press release, we made several points. First of all, that the People's Progressive Party is opposed to any toll increase at this time or any time in the future, and I'll explain that further. Secondly, that the increase is not part of the contract. That I had spoken about this in July of 2018. We put out a press release at that point in time explaining the financial model, and there is no way in that financial model or in the contract is this increase catered for. Thirdly, we believe that the government should release the contract and the financial model. That this contract now, if it's released and its provisions are made public, will not harm the financial interests of the investors in the Berbice Bridge, but it would do a lot to ensure transparency in Guyana so that all Guyanese could see that the toll schedule in the contract caters for minimal increases, nothing of this magnitude, and I will explain that a little bit later. For the fourth point is that to implement the increase by law, the minister has to sign a toll order. So I do not know why this government, maybe I should know why it is saying it should seek legal advice. I will share with you a toll order issued by a minister in the past, because the law, the Berbice Bridge Act, says that the minister has to issue a toll order specifying the maximum toll on the bridge. And so I see this mainly as a campaigning issue, given the fact that the government said we will do all that it takes to fight the toll increases, when all it has to do is not sign the toll order. And number 5, if they persist, collude with this company in increasing the rates at the bridge, we are committing to reversing those rates back to the current level the moment the PVP assumes office. So I think I've made it clear about our position. Now it's for me to substantiate all that I've said. So I've made it clear about what our positions are. So let us start with the financial model. July of this year, I pointed out to you that this financial model here is an annex to the contract. It's referred to in the contract. And the financial model here guides several things as to how provisions of the contract would be operated. If you go through the model, you would see it's based on very, very detailed projections, etc. Now, this financial model specified a toll level, and it also made projections about numbers of vehicles crossing the bridge and the revenue coming in to the bridge from the crossings. As of today, the revenue of the bridge is doing better than in the financial model. Doing better than in the financial model. And this could be verified if the government wants to do this. It's doing better than in the financial model. So that's the first point I like to make. I will share with you now, I'll give you this in a moment. This is part of the financial model. It's called the projected toll indexation and the real toll indexation. So this is 2006, and that's 2026 when the bridge would be handed back to the government. It's a 20 years concession to operate the bridge. This is it here. If you look at the starting point, the toll here, in 2006, you will see that only in 2 years, as I pointed out in the press release in July, that only 2 years, in 2014 and 2017 here. Well, it should have been 2014 and 2015, but it got shifted down. That only those 2 years that you would have had minimal. Look at the movement of the graph upwards here. Yes, you get a copy of it. You can give it to everyone. Look at this. Now this, it would have been a 6% increase in 1 year and a 17% increase in the next year. And after that, look at what happens to the tolls. They start coming down steeply to when you get to 2026. So this is 2006 here, and this is 2026. And look at the toll levels. Constant for the first 11 years, 2 minor increases here, and then it starts coming down to a level about almost quarter of what it is now. This is part of the agreement. It's part of the financial projection. So I don't know how you could have nearly a 400% increase on this toll here. This would go off the graph here. This is what is part of the agreement. And the reason that you had those 2 years of increases, tiny increases, is because you had the debt repayments would kick in on those years for the bridge. But as I said before, the revenue is doing even better. So that may have obviated any need for even these increases, because if you have better revenue in the model. So I'll share this with you. That's the next thing. I will now also share with you the Berbice Bridge Act that was passed in 2006. First of all, this is the toll order. The toll order is here. And look at the toll order signed by Ropes and Ben in 2008. And the toll order specified the rates. So the toll order has to be signed by the minister, specifying what the rates are. Now, this can't happen without the government's involvement, this increase. But you recall how in Georgetown's case, they were saying that they were opposed to the parking meter contract being implemented yet Vulcan passed the bylaws that without which the parking meters could not have been started, the project could not have been implemented. So any increase of this nature or any increase would have to be done in consultation with the minister, in agreement with the minister, and then the minister has to issue a toll order. Now this incompetent government is going to seek advice. It's here. I just pulled this down yesterday, and it's quite clear that you had a toll order before, and the act, the Berbice Bridge Act, I think, I'm not sure I have a copy of the act. Yes, here. I have a copy of the act. In section 3 of the act, it says, the part 3 of the act, it says here, the minister in the toll order, and the act, part 3 says toll order. That's it. Part 3, toll order. And it says, the maximum amount of the tolls that shall be charged during the concession period or any part thereof in respect of individual persons or any class of vehicles. This has to be in the toll order. This is by law. And it says that there's a requirement here for the concessionaire to discuss with the minister any increase. And then the minister implements it through order. And that's part of the act. So it's easy for anyone who wants to get to the bottom of this matter to do so. So let me repeat. The PPP is opposed to any increase in the tolls. We believe financially it can't be justified. It's 2. We believe that in fact, we know that this increase is not part of the contract we've signed. Yeah, I've just pointed that out to you. I've shared with you the toll schedule. You will see that it is not part of the contract. 3, we believe that the minister must release the documents. The act is a public document. The toll order that the minister signed is a public document. And he could release the contract. There is no secrecy about this. Secrecy. 3, that's the third point. 4, we believe that we urge the minister not to sign the toll order. Doesn't need to look too far. 5, if they persist in this, because we believe it is a ploy, and I'll come to that, the PPP will reverse this. Reverse it. Now, listen to this. We believe that this is part of another, it's a gimmick in the campaign season. President Granger has gone to Berbice and he has refused to do campaign meetings. He just engages in these so-called public the public interaction that the state organizes. They say it supplies with materials, in this case bicycles to hand out, and then he talks politics there, convert them into party events. And even then, his crowds are dismal. You look at the evidence in Corriverton, in Rose Hall, in Anna Regina, exists for all to see. So AFC showed up in Berbice, and they blocked off 4 roads in New Amsterdam for the massive rally, and they got about 4 people too at the beginning. So there's a huge desperation on the part of the AFC in Berbice and Apnu. They cannot go back to Berbice to talk about job creation, because they took away nearly 11,000 jobs from people in that county alone. When you look at those employed in the sugar industry and those employed around the sugar and in services that they supply to the sugar industry. They cannot talk about corruption because even in Berbice itself, they have, in this election period, given a contract, $120 million contract, to several of their cronies to clean parapets. And those people are now giving work to people to clean the parapet, urging them to support the AFC. And that's just one element of it. So the healthcare has not improved in Berbice. The ophthalmology center that used to do hundreds of operations of people, eye surgery, now that's practically inoperable, not doing anything. It's done. You talk to people about the quality of healthcare in New Amsterdam and you'll hear and other parts of the region deteriorated. They haven't done any major infrastructural work in the region. And so, what do they do? In the last elections, they made one of their big campaign pledges was to reduce the toll on the bridge, that it was too high at that time. If it was too high at that time, when 11,000 people more were working, and Berbice was in a vibrant, the economy in Berbice was vibrant. What about now, when all of those people lost their jobs under this government? How much more onerous will it be? They pledged to reduce it. And they could have easily reduced it. The write-off that they gave to DDL alone, by implications, could have built 2 Berbice bridges. The $5.1 billion that they spend on the 7 areas that I mentioned to you, wasteful spending, dietary, rental of buildings, local travel, and subsistence. The increase alone in those 7 areas could have bought out the entire Berbice Bridge. And we could have brought the tolls down. They didn't choose to do that. So why now? Why in July they were talking about this? And at that time, the increase was proposed by the bridge of 130%, or something like that, 150%, somewhere around that magnitude. How come from July to October, days before the local government elections, the increase has soared on the tolls to 400%? It had to be to shock people. And why? You ask me why? Well, we know it's not a PPP friend who is managing the company. Now, they put the chairman of the board is an AFC APNU supporter. Just go online and you will see him publicly endorsing APNU and AFC. He was placed there to chair this board. Here you have a picture of him next to one of the chief parasites, the Imran Khan of the government. Imran Khan here sitting in, this is in 2015. The chairman of the board of the Berbice Bridge, Patterson and Norton. This was at a press conference, and this was in 2015. And you can see ample evidence of it. So I think they prevailed upon him not just to announce an increase, but to make it so shocking that they will once again get another campaign issue. And so Patterson, like Granger, Patterson becomes the knight in shining armor, the embattled Patterson, who couldn't surface because of all the corruption allegations, has now suddenly surfaced to seem like the knight in shining armor. I will oppose the increase. Blame the PPP for the increase. Not that their crony over there who chairs the board, has announced this increase. But blame the PPP for it, and he will stop it. It's reminiscent of Granger showing up at Rose Hall and saying to the people, oh, I will deliver you. I will give you your severance now. So it's purely a campaign gimmick. This magnitude of increase, it's not unconscionable, it's criminal. It's not only unconscionable, it's criminal. It can't be justified any way whatsoever. This would not have been an issue had we not been in the election season. This smacks of desperation on the part of the AFC and APNO government. Desperation. And so they're going to get another thing. They can't campaign on anything else in Berbice, so they're hoping to whip up sentiments because the bridge affects all of Berbice. So last night I saw they hurriedly put out an ad in the newspapers, and the ad says, facts on the Berbice Bridge toll. Berbice River Bridge Act was passed in 2006 in the National Assembly. This is point one. While now opposition leader Bharrat Jagdeo was president. Yes. The Berbice River Bridge Agreement was signed by the Bharrat Jagdeo-led PPP government, creating the impression that, one, we passed an act, and two, we signed an agreement that led to these increases. There's absolutely nowhere in these agreements, in the financial model, I've already explained that this increase is acceptable or catered for. So, let me tell you, I'm proud of the fact that I passed this law. I'm proud of the fact that we signed an agreement and we built the bridge without burdening the taxpayers, debt to the taxpayers, and that the toll, the crossing fee was similar to what you paid, that is the toll across the bridge, was similar to what people were paying to cross on the ferry. We're proud of that fact. And we're proud of the fact that with accepting 2 years of a 6% increase and a 17% increase, the bridge would not have, that the fares would have remained constant, the tolls would have remained constant, and then declined steeply, and this bridge would have come back to the government for free. That's the financial model that we passed. We know how to do this, unlike this incompetent government. We know how to do it. And I don't think Patterson even reads these documents. I doubt he has ever read a single technical piece of document. Unless there is something on the hand here, he doesn't read it. But I'll come to that in a moment. So that is critical. So we are proud of this. And Berbice, that bridge has been transformational. So I'm glad that they said that Jagdeo, blaming me for building the bridge and these toll increases which not justified. But I want to say to them, it's true that we built the bridge, but also in my tenure, the airport was started that they said was corrupt, and now Patterson takes photo ops and the whole cabinet every single time at the same airport. They didn't do any work to start it. It was started in my tenure too. I hope you'd mention that. And the stadium was built in my tenure. And the swimming pool and here at Lilendale, and the track at Lenora, and the road on the East Coast all started in my tenure. The convention center, CARICOM building, the Hope Canal, Marriott, technical institutes in regions 2, 3, 5, hospital in Linden, water treatment plant in Linden, special hospitals at Diamond, Soddy, Lenora, Myconi, the ophthalmology center in Berbice, even the Skeldon factory. And the Skeldon factory supplies, up to now, the cogen alone can make that factory viable, the investments there. And so even that they criticize. All of these. So I'm glad that they mentioned this, because contrast that with what they're doing now. Nothing, practically nothing. And I've just given you a small list of things. I can list hundreds of other things that you can drive around this country now and see visible evidence of the transformation in that period. The hydropower that we started, they killed it. And I mentioned that now would have been another PPP project that would have been producing power by 2017. End blackouts across the country and take the rates down to about half of what we currently pay, had they gone ahead with it without bringing a single cent of debt to the Treasury. But they killed that too. So I don't have a problem that they put out an ad mentioning my name again. I'm the Berbice Bridge. The Berbice Bridge has served the people. Since the 60s, they talk about building that bridge. Never happened. If you go to development documents here since the 1960s, I'm proud that we built it. And we built it in a way that doesn't bring additional burden on people. And now so all of this is just to give them another campaign tool. So I want to urge you to go back to the press release that we issued in July of this year when the matter came up, and you would see at that time it pointed out about the financial model, 6.4% in 2014 and 17% currently, and at that time they were requesting 150% increase. Now it's gone to nearly 400%. There's no reason. So yes, you can look at that. So that is on the Berbice Bridge and what they've been doing. Now there are a few other things that I want to address today. The first has to do with the AFC. First of all, the DPI has become the campaign arm of the AFC. And so this is public funds being used there. Not that, it doesn't bother me, their pathetic attempts at survival do not bother me. But it is public funds that they are using. And so that is another in a long string of acts, of corrupt acts of this party. So even we are not the only ones on the brunt of their campaign. DPI now even criticizes Granger and the PNC in part of the campaign. So Patterson gets highlighted for going to their campaign launch and saying, every road you see in Guyana was built by Patterson. I don't know if the money is his private money from collections, donations. Not like it's taxpayers' money. He says they claim credit for it wherever they go, but it was built, let me tell you, it was built by Patterson. So you can't say the PPP claiming credit. That means it's the APNU people he's talking about. So I want to know when they go to Mabaruma, who will claim credit for the little piece of road that they built in central Mabaruma, whether he will claim credit or Granger will claim credit for the road. And then who will claim the credit for collecting $1.2 billion from the residents of Region 1 now? Who will take credit for that? None of them will take credit for that, but they will claim, both sides would claim credit for the 200 million, well, That's 200 million contract. I don't know what the value is of the road, but how much value for money we got, but for that road. The people in that region had to finance their own program and that road, and they still contributed $1 billion more to the Treasury that they didn't have to pay under the PPP. So you see that often playing out with DPI, as because the AFC struggles a lot, having pitched itself historically as the clean party and the party above the fray. They're struggling a lot with the daily occurrences and accusations of venality. Of corruption. Let me use another word so people would know, corruption. And so I saw Cathy Hughes saying that when Starbuck News wrote about the potential conflict between the establishment of a law office in Texas by her family member, her husband, that it could possibly be a conflict of interest. They were extremely brutal to the Starbuck News, accusing them of being in bed with the PPP. And then Cathy Hughes gave an explanation and said, after I submitted my statement to the Integrity Commission, I repeated this declaration of interest to the cabinet in October of 2018. So I'm wondering, in October of 2018, if that is the first time, when the first time Cathy Hughes declared her interest to the cabinet, what happened in 2006? When the contract with ExxonMobil was being negotiated, and in that contract, I think it's page 4 of the contract, if you go yourself, it's in a public document now, you see listed as the local law office, the address for the local law office of the 3 companies that now we call Exxon, but there are 3 separate companies there that make up that group. The local law office address is her husband's law office. So what about that? If she had only declared interest in October 2018, what happened in 2016 when the ExxonMobil contract was being negotiated? And so I would urge you to find out more about this, because at that time you had an AFC person in the name of Truckman who was in charge of the sector leading the negotiations. You had a cabinet member who is a member of the AFC, whose husband is also a member of the AFC. I don't know if he had resigned at that time, but he was on the other side of the negotiating table. I don't know physically there, but at least from the evidence in the contract itself, the signed contract, that his office was listed as the local office. So when they accuse, because Cathy Hughes loves to be holier than thou, when you accuse people, the Starbuck News and everyone else, of hating you or not recognizing the great qualities you have and everyone else being corrupt, you have to look deeper within. You have to look deeper within. And I urge her to do that introspection. And I wonder whether when the contract for Larry Singh, who is a tenant of their building, a contract that is infamously known as the Bonds Gate now in Guyana. Single Guyanese knows that this is a corrupt contract approved by the cabinet. Whether she had declared interest at that time too, to say this is my tenant. So don't criticize the media for pointing out a potential conflict of interest that might be mild in this case with the establishment of the law office in Texas. It could even be more pernicious, more egregious to national interests, what was done before. And so I urge greater exploration of these issues by the media. I don't have anything against Mr. Nigel Hughes. I think as a Guyanese, he has, and I think of some reputation in the legal field, he has a right to earn. And he has not been political. He said he's out of politics, so I should not really disparage him. Cathy Hughes is the public figure, and the focus is on her behavior and what she said. It's not Mr. Nigel Hughes. He has a right to ply his trade and earn a living and make money, even from oil companies in Guyana. That's the right of every Guyanese. And so I don't want to disparage his skills or his ability to perform, but just that she has been holier than thou, which gets under my skin. And going on to Mr. Patterson himself. Infrastructure minister pushes ahead with new Demerara River crossing. You know, he doesn't push ahead with anything in Berbice. He could have solved that issue a long time. But I don't believe that the opportunities are great there. So let me leave it at that. So he says, this lopsided, convoluted explanation, I think the whole issue befuddles the minister. And he thinks that we are a country that can't see through. I want to use a word. It starts with B, you. But I'm not going to use it because Mosley is here today. But it's nonsense. It's a synonym for nonsense. Pure nonsense. He goes on to explain, he explained that the procurement process sought was the most expeditious one. So you can do all the corrupt act in the world. One is done quickly. That is Patterson's justification. Do everything corrupt. Break the laws of Guyana. We have established the Public Procurement Commission, a constitutional body, has established the law was broken. So break the law on procurement. Disband the law, in fact, because the criterion we must use now is how quickly you can get the contract to people and how quickly you can move. That is the level of nonsense, the absurdity. This is how preposterous it is. Now we have a minister of the government who prides himself, he's a leader of a party, prides himself in being upright and clever. And this is the kind of explanation he gives to our country. That, forget all the procurement issue. It was expeditious. He then says, but Minister Patterson said the recommendations from the Public Procurement Commission will be taken on board. That's not a recommendation. It is a damning report that requires prosecution, not a recommendation. It is a report finding Patterson guilty of breach of our procurement law and acting illegally contrary. You need some time to fix your thing there. All right, let me drink some coffee in the meantime. Sign of the times, the equipment all falling apart. Huh? Tell me when you're ready.
I'm going to go down.
All right, you're good. All right. So listen, he goes on. Their recommendation will be taken on board. I pointed out this was now a recommendation. They never questioned the validity of the information we presented. There was never a question of the technical soundness of the competency of the consultancies. So guess what he says now? You get 22 companies to bid. You then annul the bidding process. You go back to the NPTAB. The NPTAB says retender. You sit in your office like this. A man comes and says, Patterson, I have something that is far superior than the 22 that submitted bids. You say to him, all right, I will take it not to back to NPTAB, but I'll take it directly to the cabinet in contravention of the law, and then get the cabinet in contravention of the law to approve it. Then take it back and direct the head of the Demerara Harbor Bridge Corporation to sign the contract. As the guy said, he was directed by the minister without the knowledge of the board of directors of that company or without their approval of the finances. And he says, one, it's a recommendation, and two, they never questioned its soundness. We don't know, because the other 22 who did not get the work, they could have had better agreements. And so I don't doubt that this had some impact. The way the consultancy was selected had some impact on the location of the bridge, which, as we pointed out, terminated on the land of an APNU supporter. And so he pushed all of this explanation he gives to the country. This is explanation for a corrupt act. It's just unacceptable. If we accept that as a country, we deserve to live in penury all of our lives. Be a destitute country if we allow people to give these explanations and accept them. And so he pushes ahead. Why is he pushing ahead? And he cannot push ahead because if you change the model, they announce that they are changing the model. And you do a feasibility. When Jordan came back from their trip somewhere in China or that part of the world, in Asia. So I suspect they met with individuals there who didn't like the model too much. So Jordan came and announced, we're changing the model. No longer are we building a structure that is opening, a medium height structure, but we're going to want a large the high structure for the bridge. All right, so the model change. Once that happens, once you change from a 3-lane to a 4-lane, and you change from a fixed a bridge that opens to a bridge that is fixed, and you change the elevation of the bridge, then you have to redo the feasibility study, because everything changes. Everything. The revenue, the expenditure level, etc. So because they necessitate different expenditure levels. And in doing feasibility studies, you look at the stream of benefits and the stream of costs, and then you come up with whether the project is feasible or not. But they're not going ahead. They changed the model fundamentally and will not go back to address that through a new feasibility study or an updated feasibility study. They now are forging ahead. And why? I believe we know why. We all would be released in the future. So this is what we're getting. Now, Jordan says, once again, we have seen this campaign season. The drug economy was the part. Drugs, money laundering held the economy together. I'm pleased for the first time, and I must thank the leadership of the Private Sector Commission for asking for details. Because if a Minister of Finance says, I'm aware that drug proceeds and money laundering were the primary sources of financing of many business here in Guyana and of the buoyancy, then they can't just make it a slogan. Then that minister must provide evidence, particularly the Minister of Finance. You want to bet that Jordan will never do that? That he has no such evidence. He has absolutely no such evidence. The buoyancy of the economy had to do with several things. A growing set of economic activities, growing tax base, larger deposits. If you look at aggregate deposits in the banking system, more people borrowing and investing, all of that led to the buoyancy that we saw. The converse now, I don't want to enumerate the converse ills that are taking place now. From the growth in performing that bad loans in the banking system to now no new investments in the country. And when has this government, have you ever seen them found a single, if there was so much money laundering and drug trafficking, have you ever seen them charge a single money launderer or a drug trafficker in the 3.5 years? I haven't seen any evidence of that for large-scale money laundering or drug trafficking, or even illegal proceeds. They have not. So what is happening? Sarah keeps saying this, they will do it. Soku's still busy running behind Pradoville and a few of us. Where is this big set of money that kept the economy going? So another excuse, I saw the questioning of what role Natural Resources Ministry has in the oil and gas sector. And I too am confused, because I thought Trotman had no part to play, or his ministry had no part to play in this sector any longer. And that this will be, the responsibility would be shifted over to the presidency and be carried out mainly by the Department of Energy. So I too was surprised, and I think that's in the public domain, to see they are still keeping their fingers in the pie. I don't know why, but they seem to be like people are very reluctant to let loose of this sector. There must be a motive here, and I think we should explore the motive a bit more. Ramchatan's incompetence knows no upper limit. And so we have had another fiasco at the prison. We warned about this. And he is like, I don't want to say Teflon, because there are lots of things, but he is impervious to criticism. I no doubt when he goes into his stupor and he rants around the place, he's impervious to what people say. This man has underperformed in every single sector. In every single sector. every single area of his responsibility. Crime is on the rampage. He's made a mess of their prison system. You know, look, almost every year under this government, you have some big issue. And they used to say, we're weak on law and order. And 3 years, almost 3 sets of escapes or burning of the prison, loss of lives, etc., because of the incompetence. And I pointed that out. I'm not going to go through it again. How they created this moral hazard by their own acts. They created a moral hazard that we, the country, will suffer from long into the future, particularly in regards to housing prisoners. But he goes on. In the meantime, they have a huge racket in the ministry for gun licenses for bribes. I heard that the president himself had to intervene and put a hold on some of the licenses. But of course, they wouldn't want us to know that. But I heard he had to do that himself because it's so massive in the area. The president himself is in a different world, APNU. It seems as though on the campaign trail, APNU has gone into a different mode. They're now distributing filaria tablets for people. So that's what they're doing, filaria tablets around, so that that's their house-to-house work, and hoping to capitalize on this image that they're serving people by giving them some filaria tablets. I don't want to say anything that could harm the people taking their tablets, but I've had some bad reports on what has happened with some people. But this is another tool for them to campaign, going around with filaria tablets and saying how concerned they are about people's health. So they prevent us from getting a big foot, but we're starving in many of the communities. Our jobs are gone. And so that's what APNU is doing, and then Granger's handing out some bicycles and making the stump speeches. And tomorrow, no doubt, in the parliament, we're going to hear it all again. Green state economy, support for small business, using local stuff and local manufacturing needs to grow, prudent management of our natural resources and the oil and gas sector. Education is the key to our future. Training people, opening up the hinterland. We're going to hear it all again tomorrow, and we will be in attendance, so we can put his mind at ease. We will be in attendance to hear the stump speech and how people must vote for good leaders who do things for them, you know, in the local government system, and how they return local democracy to Guyana. That is it. Not a word about the fraud that they perpetrated on many people, including APNU, by signing their names, by forging their backers' forms, by putting dead people to sign, getting dead people to sign. Not a word about that, about the high ground there, which they have done with impunity across this country. No word about that, but we're great, we're moral people, and we do great things for the country, and we love the country. That's this Trump speech, the stump speech. Those are his topics. And then you listen to that, and then you say, what's the reality on the ground? The reality on the ground is very, very different. So these were some of the issues that I just thought I'd bring to your attention. They said they will address all the outstanding severance payment for sugar workers. We hope in the supplementary that is coming tomorrow That is, if they put the supplementary, then it will include those workers from Wales too. And this is not Granger promising the sugar workers in Rose Hall. We have had over and over to bring this to the attention of the president. I did so in a private meeting with him, pointed out that this is the law of the country, he's in violation of the law, his government. I pointed out how his ministers make disparaging issues about the issue, like one minister saying sugar workers can't be paid all their severance, they will use up the money, that he had no choice. At about 4 or 5 press conferences, I addressed this issue. The workers picketed for their press conferences, for their severance payments on numerous occasions. They had to resort to the court. This government took a lawyer to fight the sugar workers on the matter, what is all due by law. And now they can't pay the sugar workers. They're sitting on $30 billion there, sitting on $30 billion, but they're coming, and we're paying interest on the $30 billion, but he's coming now for severance money to the parliament. And you have $30 billion sitting there that proceeds from the sale of the land in the sugar industry, etc., will have to repay. This is the sort of thing. They do have the money. It's just not the courage to do what is right. So thank you very much. Yes, I'll give you that at the end of the meeting. Oh, you want to look at the total order? No, not that. That is the act, right? Yeah, that's the act. Yes.
Mostly news source.
Yes, sure.
Mr. Jagdeo, sir, with regards to the Burmese, this company, you appear to be singling out the chairman of the Burmese Bridge because of his political alliance or whatever. But there's also a board that runs that company, made up of largely members of the private sector.
Well, whoever made up the board, it's a decision, I am giving a position in relation to the decision of the board. Okay. But this is a chairman who I think instigated this sort of thing. This is their guy who is a member of the board. So you, who is heading the board now, they put to head this board.
Do you still think this was a good deal that your
It's
government got?
It's a great deal. It's a great deal. It allowed the private sector, the NIS, a number of people to provide funds through the model and still built a bridge that would have kept the crossing toll similar to what was paid at the ferry crossing. So people just paid approximately the same toll, but now they didn't have to wait for days. You remember the early days, you would wait for days sometimes to cross, and the vessels don't arrive on time. So that's a great model. It allowed people to make some money, and at the same time, we had a benefit to the country and the people of Berbice. The bridge costs about $40-odd million. The bridge they're talking about now is over $200 million. Just imagine if they go with a similar model, where what the toll would be. And next thing is that this was done without any debt to the Treasury. Zero debt to the Treasury. So NIS, for example, got 20% of the bond 1. NIS got about 20% of bond 2. They're getting paid their 20% on that. They're servicing the bond. I think they have about 20% of the subordinate debt. 2. And so on those 2 or 3, the 3 components, they're getting paid their return. And I think it's 9% for the bond 1, 10% and 11%. An average about 10% return. NIS would have gotten a return on their debt or on their investments if they invested in treasury bills at about 1%. So where the investors are taking a huge hit is on the common shares because they never got a dividend after 11 years. So they put in their money and they never got a dividend. So a lot of what is being said there is those investors are getting hammered. But still does not justify any increase at this time, particularly with what's happening in Berbice. And it's not part of the agreement. Let Patterson show me anywhere or show you, or the parasite at the DPI. I already there on the parasites. I can't find better words for these people. That they should show you where in the contract. They don't like technical issues. This is too complex for them. They don't like technical, but this is reflected in their entire management of the country. They requires technical competence. I'm a former president. I shouldn't even be looking at this. It should have been for a minister or technical person. I can read the models and understand them. You ask Patterson if he ever read this model or the contract. I'm sure he never did.
But sir, could you really describe it as a good deal when the NIS would have invested a lot of money into the bridge and the NIS finds itself in sort of a hole now? So could you still buy that idea that it was a good deal?
I'm glad you came here so you can correct this impression. NIS is in a hole now, an increasingly deeper hole, because of several things. One, but most recently, the biggest impact now on NIS is thousands of people who were making contributions to NIS now no longer make contributions to NIS because they've lost their jobs. In the sugar belt alone, every month the NIS used to get payments from the sugar belt, thousands upon thousands of workers. So they had a revenue stream which has been cut severely, but they still have the payouts to make. So that has exacerbated their financial position, not necessarily the investment in the bridge. And recently, the minister went there and said that they must now consider paying out unemployment benefits. But their revenue stream has been cut. Their revenue, because 30,000 people lost their jobs in Guyana. And now they must pay additional benefits. That will bankrupt the scheme faster. So NIS needs attention from the government, not because of the Berbice Bridge. In fact, I just told you on the return that they're getting because they took part in the debt too to the bridge. They're getting a healthy return on those components. It's the common shares. And so this is a great deal for the country. Great deal for the country. If you stick with what was agreed to, not have this incompetent government do anything.
You keep saying and referring to the contract about this is not what it should be. And it should have been a 16% in 2015 and I think 17%.
You're calculating from my total order there what 16% will be?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here are your calculations now.
No, the calculations are good.
All right, the calculations are good.
But what I want to know is what are your calculations according to you? What should those sums be as of today?
Listen, this is, you don't have to ask me. This is in the contract.
I'm asking you because
So the thing is that I don't have to calculate. It says under the PPP model, there you have it here. 2002, what it was, and where it will end up in 2026. The only 2 years that you would have had increases were those 2 years, and by 6 point something percent.
Six, not
Yeah,
16.
no, 6 point something percent, 6.4%. Look at the press release that you had in July 2018, 6.4, right? And then 17%. 2 years, but look what happened from those 2 years increases. Then you start coming down back, and then you end here. So by this year, 2020, you would have been almost like a part, or 2019, you would have been just tiny, just above where it is now. And then from 2021, a steep decline. Look at where it is. 2021, a steep decline of the tolls down to this level.
So you didn't work that out in actual figures?
No, but this is the model in the contract. That's what Patterson should be discussing with them.
So the model that, let me just get this right. The model that the Berbice Bridge Company gave, showing that from 2004, what should have been, it should have been a gradual increase every year until. So they said for 2014, a car, for example, should have been at 3,080. 2015, 3440, 2016.
Well, listen, the thing is that I'm showing you, right? This is part of the contract. This is in the contract. It's graphic. So you don't, people get confused with numbers. This is a schedule in the document. You ask Patterson about it. I don't have to justify what the Berbice Bridge people are saying, because I believe they are trying to dupe us. They're trying to dupe the country. This is it. Hold them to their contractual obligations. But this government is approaching the issue from a perspective of politics. Hold the people to their contractual obligation.
But if you're saying, Mr. Jagdeo,
listen, you should read. Have you read the contract? You have not. And that is it. So that's it. I'm urging the minister to release. Should he not release the contract? You agree with me that he should release the contract. If he claims that something went wrong there, he should release the contract. That's the first thing. Secondly, I have given you the financial model. I've showed you this page, which I'm going to leave with you. So he can easily say, in the contract, Jagdeo lied. This is not in the contract. So I'm giving you more information than you're getting from a sitting minister now who comes to the press conference. Their responsibility to address this, not a PVP, but we have an abiding interest in the matter because of the distortion. It's their job. I have to take over his job now and provide details to the media now when he is reluctant to do so. And these are the people who argued about transparency. So that is, you go call Patterson and say, hand him this, and ask him, what is this all about? Is it part of the contract? Ask Patterson about it. Have you discussed this in great detail with the company? Because they're supposed by law to consult with you on this. And did you raise this point with them, that the model does not support the increases that you have? Ask Patterson that. So it seems as though we're running the country, and I don't mind being that because we'll do it again. But we gave you more info than Patterson will ever give you, or this government. So, and I can share this with you.
That model would have been prepared back in 2006. Does the model cater for adjustments, the changes to the economy? Because you have been saying the economy is not doing as well as it was on the
Gordon, I'm an economist. I just told you right at the beginning that the revenue was higher than the projections in the model. What else do you want to know?
No,
in spite of the
adjustments.
Yes, but in spite of the economy, because of higher traffic flow, they have had a revenue in all the years that has been higher than in the model in 2017. It's doing better than in the model. If anything, this would obviate the need, not enhance the need for an adjustment upwards. It's a simple financial model. I know it looks complex, but it is, there are some basic things you have to understand. If the revenue is doing better, then if there is any adjustment, it should be downwards, not upwards.
Do you think the government should buy out the bridge from the other investors?
I've been on the record all the time, but every time I do that, and I suspect you asked it, they say Jagdeo want them to buy out the bridge because
I'm asking you flat
yes,
out, do you
yes.
think they should?
I think the government can take over the bridge. The government can reduce the fares if it does. I just pointed out, and we have the resources to do so. If it takes 1 year of spending that it spends on all of these frivolous things, like dietary and renting buildings and stuff like that, it could acquire the whole bridge, and then it could charge rates similar to what it charged at the Demerara Harbor Bridge.
My
So it's simple. And they promised that. They came into office, promised that. They behave as though they're non-government. They came in with a promise to reduce. We, under the PPP, and that's why I made a commitment, this rate will not go up when we get back, and we'll take it down back if it ever goes up.
But why did the PPP under your government, sir, the bridge was built around 2007, 2008, you left office around, the PPP that is, left office around 2015. Why didn't the PPP make an effort to do what you're saying they should do now, buy out this bridge?
The thing is that it's simple. We were building models that don't bring increased hardships to people, but using more private financing. So in this case, the toll was set. There would have been no adjustment in the toll. So we didn't see any need to do that, because if the toll was going to go up steeply, we would have intervened. But the toll was similar to what was used in the ferry crossing. So it did not bring additional burden to the public. They had their service. And it's also philosophy. How many things do you fund on taxpayers' back? So the hydropower was another one, where we had a model where the government would have used 100 million in equity through the Norwegian fund, and everything else was privately financed. And then we buy power at 10 cents per kilowatt hour when we are producing power at 20 cents per kilowatt hour. So you don't use any of taxpayers' money to do that. The thing is that taxpayers' money is finite. If you have to use taxpayers' money, where does it come from? Increased taxes. So you use the market to raise funds, and the rate, if the rate was escalating, but it wasn't escalating under the PPP. It started at a particular level and it stayed flat. If we were faced with a similar situation, you want to bet we would have intervened, a steeply escalating immediate, long term. It goes to a philosophy of management. I don't understand this. These guys believe that that's why they kill these things. The government has to spend all the time and on useless things, do every project. You have to catalyze growth in the country. That's what they don't understand. Keep money circulating.
I appreciate the effort that you're making to explain this. I am still a little lost.
Yeah, sure.
If the guys are making more money now than in the money, you said that dividends have not been paid. Where is the money going?
Well, why doesn't Patterson ask them? You are saying me now.
But you have chosen to help
Yes,
us.
but I don't know. That one I don't know. So Patterson needs to say, here is the model that you have as part of your contract. Can you tell me where in this model, because the rates are supposed to be these rates, going up minor here, your revenue at the end of the year is higher than what is in the forecast for the 20 years. So what changed? That's what he has to ask. What changed? Why is it that you can't service all of the debt, pay the dividends, and look at the capital costs? Why is it? What happened? He needs to ask them that. I've not had an opportunity to interrogate this board, but if the PPP was in office, you would have had 2 specialists sit down there to go through this. That's the first thing we would have done, to make sure that 2 persons with the capability of producing a complex document like this, we would have done that. This country, anything technical, it's all anecdotal. We have an anecdotal government. They thrive on slogans and anecdotes and great things that they say, song bites, but they don't do hard work.
I second question though.
Yeah.
You understand business. In as much as the guys are asking because of the lack of the dividends
Yeah, sure.
for increasing the toll, do you think that the government should find a way to subsidize a portion of the increase that they're asking for?
Government, if we mentioned this already, government could do several things. Intervene if in the model it says 6% and 17%, first of all you have to justify that that's so, whether there is any need for that. If there is any need for that, you can say, we don't want an adjustment. So here is what you will get potentially from a 6% increase in the bridge. And we will supply those funds, or we will take over activities to that extent. You understand what I'm saying? They can do this, but it requires technical skills. And this is reflective everywhere else in the government too. What happens everywhere else is that it happening with oil and gas now. It is, so they have mismatch of skills. They don't do any technical work. They leave the other side. The parties that they are negotiating with now drive the country, not our government, because of lack of competence. And so Patterson could easily said yesterday to you, I'm not signing no toll order. I don't think he even knows that he has a toll order that he just signed. I don't think he knows. He can say, I'm not signing no toll order. He gone back to look at options, what to do. He could have said that.
So you're saying this might be political, and of course the Region 6 area is heavily supportive of your party. Is your party looking at its own options in terms of moving to the courts to block this?
Yeah,
So
if the minister colludes there, we will examine it. But you saw in the press release already, we made it clear that we are reverting back. If this government colludes and moves ahead with it, because the timing is very sensitive too. Why November 12th? Who does that? If this is not political, who sets up a salary, a toll increase on the day you have the local government elections? Why would you want to do that? So their chairman, the APNU man, couldn't have said, let's do it on the 13th or on the 11th. Why on the 12th of November? Or let's do it in 1st of December or 15th of October. Why on November 12th? Why? This increases my suspicion, and obviously the country, that it's done for a political purpose. To give the AFC another issue. They don't have any issue there to talk about.
But political purpose to whose end? Because if these tolls were to go
Gordon,
up,
can-
using your argument, where you argue from, your argument point, you would say it is the government.
No, Gordon, now you're missing key points of my presentation.
To whose
I
political
made
benefit?
it clearly about the knight in shining armor political benefit. The knight in shining armor political benefit. There's a concept like that in politics, especially for politicians who don't have any real issues to campaign on. So Granger goes and he meets the protester, and he's portrayed as responsive to the protesters. He doesn't even meet the protesters. Actually, he didn't meet the protesters. But he conveys this through a couple of news outfits, Chronicle and some online ones, that he met the protesters. And he then says to them, I will ensure you get your severance by the time we meet in Parliament. Notwithstanding the fact that they've been fighting for this all along. So Patterson, they get one of their guys to scare the people in Berbice. oh, of course this is scary. You have to pay, it's a ridiculous figures of $8,000 to cross. Where in the world somebody would pay that sort of thing? It's ridiculous. 400% increase. So the people in Berbice shocked. And then the minister comes in and says, I'm opposed to it. He is the knight. He
really
is,
sway your support?
is a knight in shining armor. A lot of people then say, this Patterson is a really great man. Never mind he messed up on the Mara Harbor Bridge and he's the subject of a corruption interview. He got the papers today. Patterson was hiding. Suddenly he's in the papers. He served his the effect. It's all about politics. He's in all the papers as the knight in shining armor, Patterson. He was hiding all the time, hiding from the media. And so, yes, the deliverer, yes, Harry, thank you. And so, that, I don't know how as a politician yourself you missed that, God Moses.
I wish I were. I'm not running
Oh, you
for
missed that, yes. You missed that.
Patterson yesterday said,
Yeah, that's good.
wait, just
Did the PPP, you will hand it over. Did the PPP make a contract available for the bridge during your tenure?
No, because this government believes in everything. That is, why is it always about the PPP? The contract is with someone, it's with the minister now.
yesterday he said, and that's what I was going to say, that there is some confidentiality clause. I wanted to ask you if you know of that confidentiality clause.
No confidentiality clause can override the parliament and the people's right to know. Confidentiality clause, if it's proprietary information. What is proprietary information here that could harm the interests of the parties? If you have like a technological process that you don't want your competitors to know about. But what could harm the Berbice Bridge in making the contract available? Their interests, because there is something like that in the law which says if it's proprietary and it could harm the interest, but nothing here can harm the interests of the parties involved. Make it public. And that's what we've been urging him to do, make all the documents public.
Sir,
But they have argued too that from 2009 when the 2200 and so forth was first instituted, they've objected, they were in disagreement. You had an opportunity then to set the record straight and say it would be, and you failed to do that. Why didn't you make it?
No. Have you seen the motion in Parliament? All of these were supplied to them in the pre-election period. Everything that you supplied now. They had a flash drive supplied to them about every study done on a mile, nearly 3,000 pages. Pre-election, pre-2015, when the PPP thought that talking to them would have made sense to get the project moving forward as a country. And by the way, on that same thing, this Catius has anyhow, I shouldn't deal with that. You remember the FIP Motilal contract? When they were cussing the PPP for doing some wickedness with the FIP Motilal. And Cathy Hughes was the PR for the company, and Mr. Hughes was the company secretary. And that didn't prevent them from saying we were doing illegal things with the company. They got a sordid history. So let's go back to that period. When the matter came up in Parliament, this was supplied. This was supplied. They campaigned on the election on lower tolls. They campaign. Why have they not delivered the lower tolls? Why did this not become a priority? We didn't campaign on that. We said this will be the toll. We put it in place. We didn't campaign on it, but we would have ensured that there was no increase on the toll. That's our commitment. Because if the 6% could have been absorbed, we believe that over time, and then it will come down. And look at what it comes down to. That is the model. People now looking from what 2021 would have brought to us. That's only 3 years away. And then the toll then would have been half, less than half of the price it is. So in the early years, it remained flat. It goes up for 2 years, and then it comes down. And then people in the future would have had crossed that bridge, not built by taxpayers' money, but built the bridge. They would have crossed and have to pay half of the current rate or even lower. Half of the current rate. Look at the model.
But sir, even with the current rate, many Barbicians have complained.
Listen,
about
you
the
are getting into propaganda and
No,
these
I-
people.
no, I'm
People
asking-
and
let me
Barbies,
finish- let me finish
people
my
in Barbies
question.
complain about lots of things. They're complaining more in Barbies now about the loss of jobs. That's the biggest complaint in
I'm
Barbies.
saying to you, sir, that under your government, they also complained about the cost of crossing that same Berbice River Bridge at the $2,200
Okay.
that you left there.
And that's-
So why didn't
And
your
no.
government after those years
So
sort of
that
reduce
is,
that?
yes. So I know some media houses are in a tight spot, trying to make this a PVP issue. Yes, they complain. So they complain, and we went to the elections, and APNU said, the PPP is not adjusting this. It's the current rate at the current rates. The PPP made it clear we're not going to increase the rates from what it is now. And if the model kicks in, we will do whatever it takes to make sure that the rates remain constant and then come down. So there would have been no increase. APNU, on the other hand, says to people, we will reduce your rate. And then what have they done now? Why blame us for that? Everybody knows what we did. It is what is happening now. We built a bridge, put in place a rate structure that was equivalent to the crossing of the ferry. We said, this is not going to increase. In fact, it will come down. You now campaign that you will reduce it. And in your tenure, because of your incompetence, the people want to increase it by 400%. How could we be blamed for that? I know you're looking for some soundbite to make the PVP look bad.
So you don't
This
think any
is
blame
an
at all?
incompetence. For what? For building the bridge?
The contract.
No,
and
no, no.
everything
For building the
associated
bridge?
with it.
No. For building the bridge, we have no apology to make for that. For establishing the University of Guyana in Berbice, we have no apology to make for that. We don't have any apology for that. And in our tenure in office, competent government, people crossed the bridge, they didn't have to get a 400% increase. In this incompetent government, they're now faced with that. We have no apology to make for doing what is good for people, and no apology whatsoever. But if you start off that it's the contract, I don't see you pay enough attention to the same attention to the ExxonMobil contract that is 1,000,000 times more egregious. This one built the bridge. People had use for it for 11 years. You just go and ask any Barbician now about how that has changed your lives. And for 10 years, it remained at a fee, and people were crossing. May have thought the fares are high, but they were crossing, they were paying it, they had jobs, they were working. Now they lost their jobs under this government, and this government incompetence wants to blame this on the PPP, saying we signed a bad contract, but they will not release the contract. If they can't release the contract, let them release the part where it says that the PPP agreed to this fare, the toll increase. Let them just release that part. But this is all lies. You remember how it was under the same ExxonMobil contract? Nobody punishes this group for lying. Ramjatan went to Berbice and said, Jagdeo in 2008 amended the Petroleum Act that Hoyt had to prevent disclosure of the agreement. Dominic Gaskin said the same thing at a chamber meeting in Berbice. Patterson said the same thing, that I did it in 2011. That was their excuse for not releasing the contract. Then we found out it's all a lie. I never amended any contract, petroleum contract, to prevent disclosure of the agreement. They then switched their excuse to the national security implications caused them to do that. So my point is that I know that they're desperate, and some media houses that are in their corner are desperate for sound bites from us to blame the PPP. Desperate. But this one is not going to go down unnoticed by Burbies because we're up there. I'm going there and I'm going to talk about it, and the media houses too. They haven't seen the contract. Yeah, they're blaming the PVP for it, a bad contract. And Lord, mostly, I don't have any apology to make for us building that bridge. It's been transformational. It was promised since the 60s. It's this government that can't manage it properly.
Would you have changed anything about it? Because you have the NIS investment, but yet you have the private organization.
No.
The banks are
No,
having a
no.
bigger say.
No.
So would you have changed anything at all?
No.
Looking back now?
The thing is that this is it. Look at this. And you, every time you want to say something about the contract, look at this model. This is in the contract. It starts off in 2006 and ends in 2026. This is the toll level. You would see 2 years, it peaks here. Goes from this, goes up here, and then that's it. And then it comes down steeply. This is the PPP record of building a bridge without public money, getting it to function 11 years without no increase. Then in 2 years, you should have had a 6% increase, not 400% and 14%. And in the third year after that, it starts coming down steeply to look where it would be, less than half of what it is now. By the time you get to 2021, that's it. That's our record. That's good management. That's good negotiation. That's looking to people's interests. And we could have intervened at any time here with the large sums of public money we had to even take over the bridge or do anything else. We could have done that. But we didn't have anything built in. This is our record. This don't lie. This wouldn't lie. Because Patterson and the others can see that. That's why I'm going to share it with you. All of you will get a copy of it. So every time you write about this, you will look at this and see what the toll schedule was.
So in
That's
essence, the
fine.
Barbie's Bridge company is trying to bamboozle government when they
They can bamboozle, and that's not a difficult thing to do with this incompetent government. With this incompetent government, it's not a difficult thing to do.
I'm wondering if what is happening with the guys is the scale-down model where you propose that it will work, but it's not working as it was proposed.
Well, the thing is that that's another day, but I can talk to you about that too when I pointed out to you a couple of things. We got the best company in the world to do the feasibility study. They're not the politician. They did a full-fledged feasibility study. We went to public tender for the contractors. We hired an international firm to oversee quality of the work. That firm, that that firm failed. We sued the firm. Errol Hanuman had a conflict of interest. He was on the board and also approving payments to the firm. That case, we lost it. This government refused to appeal the case. That is short history. So we hire technical people to go through, look out for our interests. They failed us. We went to court. This government ceased to look out for our interests. Look at so many other cases that we have now, that rather than go forward and take it to the conclusion, they're up to settle. Look how quickly they're settling billions of dollars of settlement everywhere else.
So that's what I'm saying, Dr. Maybe BCCI will sue the government because the model is...
But then if the Berbice Bridge Company believes that the government is not treating them fairly, they can sue the government for breach of the agreement. And that's when the government gets to present its case before. But you can't go and impose something on people just like that. You can't do that. And if you sue the government, then you go to court with all of this and say, look at what you sign up to. And look at the model. You accepted this model. Right. Thank you.
Can I have a copy of these?
Yeah, sure. Can you